Hello everyone. Today I'm going to narrate about two podcasts that I listened for these 2 months for ICT free. And the most important thing that I want to say about this assignment that it was really helpful for me to gain so much precious information for my future field, public policy, and especially in the case of expanding my vocabulary size. The first podcast that I was listening is "In Our Time" from BBC. And why I chose that because it was about historical events throughout the centuries, and I'm really into the history and all of this explanation and theories why some event just happened. And as far as I know, the host of this podcast is Melvin Bragg, who is English broadcaster, author, and parliamentarian. So that's why I think he has some authority to talk about it. And also he could keep conversation with specialized and also experts in their fields. So that's why I think this podcast was really credible to listen. And also all of us that know that BBC is an organization that official in Great Britain who spread information, news, and TV series around the world. That's why it can be trustworthy. Why I think it's a problem for my field. Uh, it's important to know that history and politics are two crossing fields that can be without each other. Why? Because they are all about the people, community, society, government issues, and sometimes both of these fields can explain each other's phenomena. That's why it's really necessary to note for this case. In the second case, I need to say about overview overall this вырежем, короче, нормально. Overall, there were plenty of podcasts that I would choose for this task, but mostly I picked several of them about public policy. So the first was about the Mormon rebellion in the Jamaica that happened against British Empire to have their freedom and be independent of the empire. Second one was about Age of Gold, where people were really afraid of in England of economic crisis that occurred in that time in 19th centuries, and they really wanted to exchange their currencies to gold. And also there was about some Scotland issues and the Davidian Revolution that really shifted the economic situation in Scotland, Edinburgh, and so on. But in all of these podcasts, I found the most interesting about the Irish Rebellion in 1798. Why? Because in some case, Ireland has had a similar situation in history being colonized by separate countries, and Irish really had good results in gaining independence from them, and especially in this rebellion, they can prove that they can rule their country by themselves. In this episode, there was about the Catholic and Protestant parliamentarian. In one of each was supported by British Empire. The second one, the predominant Catholic, was supported by simple Irish people, and it gave me really good information to know how rebellion can start and how they end up and how to be successful at doing some several things and just shifting, saying the history with a one click. And what I really also gained the precious knowledge about it is just how they changed their political and economical system in their country and where there was a starting point of being with free country out of it, out of the British Empire, and so on. And I strongly recommend for my peers and group mates to listen to this podcast because It provides them with good terms and expanding, as I also said, about the vocabulary, about public policy and politics. So I think it will be really useful for them to listen. In the second part of the video, I will broadly tell about why the second podcast is relevant for my future major and what was the important thing about it that I gained for myself. First of all, I want to say that the name of the podcast is Middle East Law and Governance. It's all about the MENA region and its political, economic situation that is happening primarily right now. That's a little hint about what's MENA region. MENA region is Middle East and North Africa and all the countries that lies in this area. And what I need to tell about is why I chose that because as I before mentioned that it's appropriate for this case because it's all about policy and policy making of the governments of these countries and moreover the main speaker of this podcast is Ezra Kamil who is advisory board member of this little organization and saying in overall Middle East law and governance is a peer-reviewed journal which is published during this last decade. In every episode, we can see in here that there was a specialized speaker who has really deep knowledge about the MENA region, has really some authority to talk about it. So overall, every episode of this podcast was devoted to tell about those countries which are light and just like situated in this region and say about some political events that was happening during these last 25 years. Well, there was some episodes where talk about the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordanian region and also about the Tunisian exceptionalism with some pandemic restrictions during 2020 in Lebanon and so on, especially concentrating on the political changes during that times. And as far as I know, the most important thing about it, it was just like Muslim Brotherhood and the religious effect on the political parties and the government administrative issues. My favorite episode from all of these podcasts was about the rise of independent women candidates in MENA. Why? Because we know that as a modernization and globalization demands from every country to have gender equality not only in some domestic chores but also in a high position in administrations, especially in government, because as far as we know, mostly it applies with a male, especially in some deep patriarchal country. In this case, the told about that they had a really climb of independent women candidates, but there are some national factors that really prevents it, and some financial, maybe or political blocks that really uh, distorts the reality to establish this tendency. But overall, it has really negative increase during all these years. And what I want to say about it also that there was so many precious information about how they conduct the government, how the parliament is created from the rural urban people, just mixing all of them and so on. Because it's far from our culture that Kazakhs usually came from Soviet Union, Russian, and this is a really extraordinary view on how the government should be and how it should be structured. So, and I really also recommend for all people to hear it just for their um for their broaden horizons or maybe just knowing some new knowledge about what's going on right now in the MENA region and so on. So I was really enjoyed to do this task and gain so much precious and really necessary information for my future field. Thank you for attention. So it's ICT free.